South Africans can expect record fuel price increases in April, with predictions from the Automobile Association suggesting a more than R2 increase. Based on the current data, 95-octane petrol is set to increase by R2.15 a litre, while 93-octane is expected to climb by R2.07 a litre. Diesel, on the other hand, might go up by between R2.94 and R3.08 a litre, and illuminating paraffin by R2.51 a litre. For more on this, we're joined by Layton Beard, Automobile Association spokesperson. Layton, always good to see you. So how is this data put together and for us to come to this conclusion, given that oil prices are quite liquid at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. The averages on a daily basis are taken, and based on those daily averages, the Central Energy Fund then makes a calculation as to whether there will be an increase or decrease, or as they call it, an under-recovery or over-recovery. And as we make notice of in our press release, this is only mid-month data, so the picture is likely to change before the end of March going into April, because the price is only adjusted on the first Wednesday of every month. But I think it does give a fair indication of where we're headed in terms of the fuel price. There definitely will be an increase going into April. We don't see that that's not going to happen. It's just a question of what the quantum is going to be. And at the moment, it's around R2 for petrol, which is quite shocking for many consumers.
And I guess South Africa would not be the exception to the rule, given everything that is going on, right? So yesterday we spoke to Agri-SA. They're calling for a scrapping of the fuel levy because that will have a huge impact on the agricultural sector as we see a rise in oil prices. When we take a look at a scenario where this would be a likely outcome or a definite outcome, what are the ripple effects for you and I?
You mean of scrapping the fuel levy?
I beg your pardon, no, of having a fuel price increase that is so high, given that it will be historic.
Yeah, it will have a huge ripple effect on the economy generally. It's going to have a ripple effect on individual consumers. Inflation is likely to be affected by this, which is going to have another impact on lending rates. So the impact is going to be enormous. We will see increases to prices, to goods that people need to survive. So basic commodities will for sure become more expensive, and that will obviously filter through to the disposable income that people have at the end of every month. A R2 increase pushing fuel further into record territory is going to be extremely difficult for very many millions of South Africans. This is certainly not good news. And if the situation in the Ukraine continues, the likely prolonged impact on oil prices will definitely filter through to a prolonged impact on South Africans and the prices we pay here as well.
I'd like for us to expand on that in terms of the drivers of this predicted rise in the price of fuel in the country.
Look, international petroleum is one of those commodities that we need to obviously supply fuel locally. So when we're buying it on an international market, that price that is determined is the price that we need to pay. And there's very little the South African government can do about that. When there are concerns about supplies, as is the case currently because of the situation in the Ukraine, the conflict, the war, and Russia's invasion, that is going to push those oil prices higher. We've seen, and we make note of this as well, that, you know, a couple of days ago, oil was pegged at a specific rate, then it came down to a specific rate. Today, it's climbed again. That oil price is the price that we pay, and the higher that oil price, the more it's going to impact on local prices, as we are seeing now. And again, we make the point, 98% of the increase that is being forecast at the moment through the data from the Central Energy Fund is as a result of this high international oil price. And that high international oil price is as a result of geopolitical developments, specifically what's happening in Ukraine. And again, if that situation continues, it will have a ripple effect locally.
On the Agri-SA example that we brought up a little bit earlier on, I guess in terms of offering some reprieve, that's at least what the agricultural sector sees as a proposition. What sort of reprieve, you know, if any, is there a silver lining here?
Look, we're going into April, which is traditionally the month in which the fuel levies are increased. The one small relief we have at the moment is that government heeded the AA's calls and didn't increase those levies. So that's already a nominal victory and a landmark one at that. In terms of the levies that are attached to fuel, they generate billions of rands to the economy. The general fuel levy generates 90 billion rand to the economy annually. It's an easy tax for government to collect. It's a consistent tax for government to collect, and it's a tax that everybody pays essentially. If you were to strip that from the fuel price, the question then becomes, but how do you replace that tax? How do you replace that 90 million that is now suddenly not available to government, and where do you find that money? So that is the tricky debate that I think needs to be had. There are some options on the table, and government made mention of this yesterday in its proposals to Parliament, putting a cap on the number of litres people can buy. How that will be policed, I don't know. There are some things that are being proposed, but they require a lot more debate and discussion than simply saying, yes, we'll do that. You ask about a reprieve. One of the things we say that needs to be looked at perhaps more urgently than not is what are we doing with the Road Accident Fund, and why and how can we better utilize the R2.18 we're paying on every litre of fuel for an institution which, for all intents and purposes, is so poorly managed as the RAF.
Thank you very much, Layton Beard from the AA. Not a bearer of good news this afternoon, at least. Thank you very much for availing yourself for that conversation.